Hi everyone, welcome back to Angie's Answers. Angie Dugan from the Quilting Connection. I am working on a project right now that I thought you might be interested in the technique that I am doing. So this is a banner for one of our local Christian schools. They do a banner every year for the graduating class, and then they put the kids' names on here too. So you can't quite see the whole thing. I'll reveal the whole thing at the end, but it is a really big cross. And I did free motion meander here in the middle in the black, and then avoided, of course, all the letters. But coming out in this red, they wanted me to do like rays coming away from the cross in the middle. And I was trying to figure out how could I do that, keep them consistent, make it look nice. I thought about using the mark feature with the Pro Stitcher, but then I thought about a feature that I really honestly haven't used much, and that's the move feature. So I'm not sure if you've ever seen it or used it, but it's under your Pro Stitcher tab. It says move at the top, and then there's a box with all different arrows pointing in different directions, which way you can tell that Pro Stitcher to move. So I've been using the move feature on all of it. I'm just down to this last section right here, but I wanted to share with you how I'm doing that. So I'm gonna zoom in so you can see the screen, and then we'll come down and I'll show you the quilt. There's also some applique here in the middle, and then we've got the letters down here. So I am skipping over those. So I'm taking some tie-offs and some tacks on each side of those appliques and each side of those letters. And then I can tell that move feature to stitch or to not stitch. So when I need to skip over that applique, I'm just turning off that stitch button, still holding that arrow the direction I want it to move, then letting go of that arrow, so then I can turn that stitch button back on when I'm ready to have it stitch again. So let me bring you in closer so you can see what I mean. So here is what my Pro Stitcher screen looks like. I've got it on that Pro Stitcher tab, the move option. These are all those arrows down there to tell it what direction you want it to go. I do have my speed up to 50, so it goes a little faster. I have the continuous turned off. What the continuous means is if I touch one of these arrows, it will keep stitching until I touch that arrow again to make it stop. I didn't feel like I was accurate with that. So when that continuous button is turned off, when this one is not dark green, that means it's not activated. So that means that I have to hold this arrow button, the direction I want it to go. And as soon as I release my finger from the screen, the machine will stop moving in that direction. So it's a lot more accurate and easier for me to get right up to that applique or right up to that ditch of the black part on here. And then, like I said, I do have the stitch button activated. So let me do one and hold that arrow down. So I'm gonna hold onto this arrow here, and that's gonna move my Pro Stitcher in that direction. And I'm holding it until I get to the applique. Then I'm gonna let go, and I'm gonna take the stitch function off. I do need to do a little bit of a tack, so I have to touch the motor icon to lock it and release it. Then I can move the machine freely just a little bit and do some tacking. Don't worry, on the next one, I'll zoom in on the quilt so you can see what's happening on the quilt. So now the stitch button is turned off. I need to move it just like maybe a ½ an inch to get to the other side of this little applique that's right here. So again, I'm gonna do motor button to lock it, motor button to unlock it. Then that way I can wiggle a little bit and lock that stitch in place. Then I'm gonna turn my stitch function back on. I'm gonna move it so it's stitching again until I get to that next part of the applique, motor button to lock it, unlock it. Because what happens is when it does that moving, the motors are automatically gonna be locked, so you can't do that little wiggle to do like your back tack. Let me slide you guys this way just a little bit, because it's gonna keep moving to this left here so I can get up to that angle. So now I'm at the applique again, so I need to turn the stitch function off. I'm gonna move just a little bit. Again, it's maybe like 3/4 of an inch this time across that applique. Then I'm gonna turn my motors off, or lock the motors, unlock the motors, so that way I can do a little wiggle there to lock my stitches in place again, turn my stitch function back on, move it again, I'm at the applique again, lock it, unlock it, little wiggle to lock that in place, turn my stitch off, move it up until I get to the other side of that applique, lock my motors, unlock my motors, little wiggle to lock that in place, turn the stitch back on. Now I can keep moving all the way until I get to that black ditch line of the cross. Lock the motors, unlock the motors, little wiggle so I can lock that in place. Now I have to bring up my bobbin thread and tie off. So let me bring you guys in a little closer so you can see that stitched line. So here is the line that I just stitched. I started here, I stitched up until I got to that applique, then I did that little wiggle, I turned off the stitch button so then I could move across here, locked my motors, unlocked my motors, did my little wiggle here, turned on that stitch so I could keep stitching here, locked my motors, unlocked my motors to wiggle there, turned the stitch off so I could jump across, locked my stitches here, turned the stitch button back on, locked my motors, unlocked my motors, wiggled, turned the stitch off so I could drag my little tail right there. Let me try to get there so you can see. Here's my little tail that I did my drag. Then I locked my motors, unlocked my motors so I could wiggle and tack, and then came all the way up to that ditch. So now I'm gonna bring up my bobbin thread. I chose not to stitch across this way in the ditch here, but I am cheating along like this bottom edge, and every other one I'm stitching over where that binding's gonna cover. But the backing on this is black, so you can kind of see here that's the other side of the cross where my tacks are coming in, and I didn't want any lines going that way on the backing because I am using that contrasting red thread. So let me get set up for the next one, and then the next one I'll have you looking at the quilt as I'm coming back down this way across this applique. I'm not gonna go through this part because I didn't stitch through that part. So when I get to here, I'm gonna be able to do my tack and lock, then we're gonna keep moving it down probably until it gets to this edge, and then I can finish up that way. So I brought my bobbin thread up here. I moved over about 2 inches. I'm not choosing to measure exactly 2 inches, so you can see this one is a little closer than the one next to it, but I think it kind of gives it a little more interest by not being exactly perfect on every single one. Sorry, I'm trying to get you in a good spot. So I brought my bobbin thread up here. Now I moved over here. I did a little wiggle to lock my threads in place. So now you can't see the screen, but I'm going to talk through what I'm doing on the screen. So on my screen, I have that move function on. I have the stitch function dark green, and now I'm touching that diagonal down arrow because this move feature is working off of perfect 45s. So I don't have to worry about, am I doing the right angle? It's doing that 45-degree angle for me. So I'm going to stitch until I get to the top of that applique. So I'm holding the arrow facing down on the diagonal, and then it's going to work its way to the applique. Then I'm gonna let go on the screen, lock my motors, unlock my motors. Oh, you know what? I need a little bit more. There we go. Lock my motors, unlock my motors, do my little wiggle there to kind of lock those threads in place. You could do needle up and down too if you wanted. You just wanna make sure those are nice and secure. So now I'm gonna turn off the stitch function. Then I'm gonna hold that arrow. Oops, hold on. I need my needle up. There we go. Then I'm going to hold that arrow and it's gonna move across this applique. I'm gonna help it. I am gonna stitch this little part right here because I did stitch this little part right here. So I'm at the edge of the applique again. So I'm gonna turn on my stitch function, lock my motors, unlock my motors, do that little wiggle or needle up and down, however you wanna do it, just to make sure that your threads are secured. I like to take about 4 to 6 stitches every time I start and every time I stop. So my stitch function is turned on so I can hold that arrow and just come across that little section for that applique. Lock my motors, unlock my motors, little wiggle to make sure those are locked in place. Turn off my stitch function because I need it to drag a thread across here. Hold that arrow facing down so it moves across there. Lock my motors, unlock my motors. Do my 4 or 6 stitches to lock those threads in place right there. Turn the stitch function back on. Hold that arrow facing down till I get to the applique again. Lock my motors, unlock my motors. Little wiggle, needle up and down, make sure that's all secure. Bring my needle up, turn my stitch function off because I need it to drag across here. Hold that arrow facing down till I get to the edge of the applique again. Lock my motors, unlock my motors. I know it sounds silly that I'm saying lock the motors, unlock the motors, but when the move function is on, both of your channel locks are going to be turned on when you let go of that arrow. So both channel locks are activated. So to deactivate my channel lock so then I can do that little wiggle in that tack, I have to tell that motor icon to lock and then unlock. So now I'm going to turn my stitch function back on and stitch all the way down to my edge here. Then I'm going to lock my motors, unlock my motors, and then I'm going to cheat. So I am going to do a little wiggle to lock that, but that's hidden in my binding. Then I'm going to stitch over about 2 inches again. Then I'm going to hold the arrow facing up. And that's going to work back up towards that applique for me. Ooh, that's a skinnier one. That's okay. I should have went a little bit more to the left. Or sorry, to the right. I'm very dyslexic, left, right challenge. So I'm at my applique again, lock my motors, unlock my motors, a little wiggle to lock that in place. Then I'm gonna turn that stitch function off, hold that arrow facing up so I can sneak across that applique till I get to the edge again, lock my motors, unlock my motors, do my little wiggle to lock my threads in place there, turn the stitch function back on, hold the arrow facing up until I get to the edge of the quilt again. So now I need to lock my motors, unlock my motors, do my little wiggle up there to lock my threads in place. Then I am gonna stop and pull away, bring up my bobbin thread, cut that all off, cut off where I started to. I'm trying to be really good about my tails so I don't leave them anywhere. Now from here, sorry, moving down a little bit, I'm gonna move over about 2 inches along this edge, bring up my bobbin thread here. I should be clear of this applique now, so I shouldn't have to worry about that applique. So now I can leave that stitch function turned on. Let me bring you up to the screen again so you can see that. So I've got that stitch function turned on. I'm just gonna hold this arrow and then it's gonna stitch that entire line for us. So I'm holding with my thumb, it's stitching that line, but watch what happens if I let go. The machine will stop automatically. If you had the continuous button on, then it wouldn't stop until you tapped that arrow again. So that's why I prefer to have this continuous off. That way when I hold this, it'll start stitching, but it'll stop stitching for me as soon as I let go of it. So that makes it really easy to be able to stop it right in that ditch. So I'm gonna come all the way down here. So right now my machine is locked. I can't move it at all. So that's why you have to come up and lock the motors, unlock the motors. Then I can do my little wiggle to secure that, then move over a couple inches again, kind of eyeball that, pause my machine, and then I'm gonna hold this arrow facing up to do that angle back to the black. So watch as I get close to that ditch there. I'm gonna let go and it's gonna stop and I am right by that ditch, but my motors are locked again. My channel locks are locked. So then I have to do that, lock the motors, unlock the motors, then I can come down, do my little wiggle to lock my threads, bring up my bobbin thread. So I'm gonna continue working on the rest of this. When I get to these white letters, same thing. I'll stop at the letter, I'll drag across the letter and just continue on. I'll take this off once it's all done and show you the quilt once it's off the frame. So here it is off the frame. You can see the middle here, that black. I just did that free motion meandering. It's hard to see those rays to get some good light. Let me come over by this applique. These were kind of a little loose, so I did free motion stitch around inside and outside and through that to help hold that down. When I started doing these rays, I started from each one of these corners of the cross and then worked my way and did that line first. Then I measured here and down, then I measured here and down. So each one of those, I started from that point of the cross like that. Then I want to show you what I did at the top here. So I needed to know where the middle was. So I had marked the middle of this top edge. Then I ran a basting stitch from that edge down. So when I was bringing in these, I could stop at that middle point, change the direction of the arrow, and make it stitch to that edge. I thought that would look nicer across that top edge to have those rays going from the middle out. So again, I used the move feature with the Pro Stitcher because it was just so much more accurate than that mark feature. It's doing those perfect 45-degree angles, and I found this one first and then worked my way this way and worked my way that way on each one of these 4 points coming out from that cross. So I hope you've enjoyed this project. I hope it gives you some inspiration. If you have any questions, you can email us info@quiltingconnection.com. You can give us a call, 262-723-6775. Don't forget to check out our website, quiltingconnection.com. Thank you so much for watching, and happy quilting.